Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Isa. I am your host, Isabella Castro, and I'm thrilled to have a very special guest with us today, Professor van Eenennaam. I will never learn how to pronounce his surname. I promise I'll learn it before I die. But anyway, Professor Fred is a global leading expert in value-based healthcare, a passionate educator, and a key driver in implementing and expanding this model across the globe, and more recently, with interest in some activity in Latin America. Today, we will dive in his personal journey with value-based healthcare, his mission in education and implementation, and lessons he has learned along the way. We will also discuss some recent reflections on the role of dentistry in VBHC, a topic that I'm particularly excited about as I've become ambassador for dentistry in Brazil. Professor, welcome. It's an honor to have you here. Could you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Castro. Isabel, it's of course a pleasure to be with you. Try to be brief for my introduction. Fred van Eenennaam. Even the Dutch cannot pronounce it. So, so don't worry. Don't worry. No problem.
I promise I'll learn it.
Well, but you could, but very nice to be here. So my background, I'm a professor of strategy and governance, working at a couple of universities. That's number one. Number two is I have very much an interest on businesses and on implementation. Probably has to do with my family business background and my sort of extension-based consulting background. So I'm always very interested in if a group of people can run a business, create good stuff for their clients, have a lot of fun, make that work. So I'm in the strategy field and implementation guy. That's sort of the background. Halfway the 90s, I got very much interested, like more economists and more business people on this fascinating thing of life science and health. And especially the cure side of care got me very much interested. Like so many people, you think, well, what we've learned in business, can I help out a little bit in the delivery of care? I always say, had I known it was so complex, partly because the systems are extremely complex, and you say this is not very wise, but also there's fundamental differences in healthcare delivery that I wasn't aware of at the time. So I learned that, but I was really fascinated about doing that, and that's how I sort of, moving fast forward, ended up with becoming president of Value-Based Healthcare Center Europe. And with my advisory firm, we did a lot in healthcare delivery. And I am passionate, as you can tell, about education and training. So that is what we do. And I'm super excited about people that want to spend the time on diving into VBHC. And if we can help people implement it, then we're very happy.
Lovely. It's a beautiful journey and very inspiring. Congratulations. And so let's start with your journey with the BHC. Everybody knows that your name is a synonymous with value-based healthcare, but every great journey, as we know, has a starting point. Can you share with us how you first got involved with VBHC? What sparked your passion for this model?
Yeah. So I already mentioned I got, like many people, very much interested in life science and health, and I'm an implementation guy, and so we try to help out with delivery of care. And around 2003, I was introduced to Professor Porter, my Porter from HBS, by a mutual friend, and we got along really well. He was building up a strong network on economics and social wealth creation. And I was super excited about that. So we did cases and we worked together. But he knew I was also spending at least half of my time on healthcare and basically implementation. So the struggles I had, was not unique, but how do you get it going? That was sort of what we talked a little bit about. But then he started himself working on what became value-based healthcare. So he started with this question of why is the US so unhappy with their healthcare system? And how could we improve that? And I thought, well, certainly there are lessons from the US that I can learn in my country. But so he sort of almost finished his book, talked a little bit about cases and things like that. Then I got done he gave me his analysis. It's a very fundamental analysis. He did, of course, from the business school perspective, from the Kennedy School perspective, on the government angle, and from the Harvard Medical School. And he said, this is our analysis, or this is how we think we should do it. And we have here the cases, we have here the examples. So we know it's correct. We know it can be done. But then my partner would say, well, that's it. Fred, you're the implementation guy. Go see if you can implement it in Europe. Can see if you can spread it. So I did some projects, and we started to try to implement. And I lost a lot of hair in the process, but I basically saw it. I liked it a lot. Because I know the rigor of the analysis is correct. Number one. Number two, the examples and the implementation is doable, but we didn't really know if you could do it in Europe, or if you could do it in an existing other system. So that's what we spend a lot of time on, figuring out how to get that going. And what I really liked about it, I learned it at George Washington University, is healthcare is people's work, number one, and number two, it's teamwork. And that was so integral in the approach, really helped us try to figure it out. So we try to implement, of course, starting with cardio and onco and ortho, the typical things, if there are new things in healthcare delivery. But then we were able, as internationally, to see that it could also work in primary care and how that should work. And there were great examples. That was a big step with Oak Street Health, and many have followed. We're going to talk dentistry. There's also wait a minute, it can happen in dentistry. I personally did a lot of work on internal medicine, trying to figure out how with diagnostics to get that going. So in this journey, we saw that we could implement in more and more medical conditions, more and more field, get a little bit more on the quality of life and on health. So that got me super excited. So still every day I'm learning, trying to figure out how it can be implemented, and try to help people avoid the mistakes we've made or others have made, and make it easier to implement. So that is sort of the personal passion on it, and always wanted to be involved in the real implementation, but also want to be involved in disseminating that knowledge and trying to make sure it stays focused on what the analysis was. And that is what we do. It's now more than 15 years. It's amazing. And at least I'm very proud to say on behalf of the community that VBHC, it works. It can be implemented. It's not the easiest thing to do, although we try to make it easier. It is good for teams and a lot of fun. It's good for patients, of course. And we are trying to improve and using new technologies and all kinds of things to make sure that we make it better and easier. And I personally am try to be objective as an academic, but I cannot be objective about this. So I don't see a better answer to the issues that we face in patients, in families, for our loved ones, and also on the societal level than VBHC. So I'm still super excited and very happy you invited me for the podcast, and that you embarked on that journey as well, which is super nice to see. Yeah.
It's beautiful to see the enthusiasm that you have partnering with the community of patients, the community of students, the community of professionals, of early adopters, of champions, but especially putting together education and implementing, and then put it in a large scale, in a global scale, like in a country scale. This is it's such a beautiful job, and we can see when you speak how you are passionate about it, and you do have a long career at this point. Can you think of any points if you have changed your perspective, and how your perspective, if it has changed or evolved across the years since you started?
That's a very good question. If the first thing I could say is the analysis Porter did, I think is still valid today. Of course, if you read the original work of 2006-7, more or less, then of course the world has evolved. But what I like about the way this has been analyzed and set up is that it is a journey, that it's possible to to work with, as long as you stay with the philosophy, as long as you stay with the core concepts, and we've added what are the implementation rules you should abide to make it work. But if you do that, we've seen that it's flexible enough to get that going. So if I go back to that journey, I think the core of it is super strong. The idea of having medical conditions, having outcomes, having at least the effort to understand and reduce the cost per patient cycle instead of having a budget costing idea, focusing on the team, learning. Patients are our best teachers. Learn from the previous patients to the next patients, and have the fun of improving all the time. That core is so super strong and helps people, even if they're in different departments or different parts of the healthcare system. If there's a patient there and you can organize it so that people can really do the job together, then that is at the core, and I don't think it's going to change. Having said that, of course, we've learned, as you hinted on, across the years, a couple of things. First, we didn't really have an answer on primary care. We didn't have a good VBHC answer on prevention 1, 2, or 3. We didn't have a clear answer on multimorbidity. And over the years, not we, but we as a community have figured that out. So people have shown how it worked, used the principles, and figured out how to do that. So that is the real progress, and I'm very happy to disseminate that all the time and give a prize every now and then and an award and make sure that we understand the implementation side of it as a good thing. So that is one of the things. There are, I think, 3 challenges that Porter sort of hinted on and did the first steps and left on the page. And we've seen that we've done a better job beyond the medical conditions approach. So the number one, of course, is the way of payment. So Porter's original idea, quite rightfully, has been the payment is actually, the way of paying is in the way of doing the right thing for patients. If you see all the videos of him, he's very passionate about it. How can you be so hung up of paying everything on a fee for service? How can you be thinking that DRGs are good? How can you see technology as the enemy and innovation? Why is that? How do you come with all these macro ideas which don't play under micro? So that is, if you see original videos, he's really mad about that. So that's sort of fun to see, but that's still there. His answer was very quickly, let's have bundled payments and probably with risk sharing models or figuring something out. And there's a lot of work that we've done the last couple of years to try to get on the same spirit, but get to other payment models. And I'm very happy that we have now, with the help of people also outside of VBHC, that we can say, wait a minute, we can really pay for value. We need to start probably with avoidable spend. We need to create win-win-win. And yes, at certain parts, we can absolutely use Mike Horder's bundle and risk sharing thing. That's absolutely the right thing to do, knees and hips or whatever. In other things, you still can have more other payment models which are better, as long as you do this together with the leading doctors, with the payers, and with the patients. And then you can come up to a fair, and industry, by the way, and then you can come up with a fair payment model, and not payment models that will basically hinder people to do the wrong thing. So there's still a lot of implementation work to do. But we know now that works. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing that was, of course, a big thing is, okay, Mike, so you have outcomes. Yes. So outcomes. Okay, so I remember at the early days, is it only medical outcomes? Is it only those? Or should we incorporate, let's say, perception measures of patients? Should we incorporate measures of the family instead of the patient? Should we incorporate quality of life? How can we sort of do that? And that was one bit. And there has been debates on it. I've always been pragmatic. If it's good for the patient, it works, as long as it's doable. That it's a good thing. And let's try to find a balance between medical, quality of life, and perception measures, and see not only that we measure it, but can we really deliver on it? Otherwise, why would we measure? So I think that's a real big progress that we have done that. In palliative care was, for me, an absolute eye-opener to ask families and close ones after 6 months about how was how do you look back at the process of saying goodbye to life, and how was that going? What should be better? Those improvements are super cool, and are very helpful for many fields. So the outcomes is a lot done. I'm very proud to be one of the first, probably in the world, with the cardio people in the Netherlands on, okay, these are the outcomes, but we need a method to carefully get to those outcomes and be selective, because we don't want to have 200 of it. So how we gonna do that? And I'm very happy that later iChong came into being and improved on that methodology and used it and gave us, what is it now, 25 or 30 outcome sets. We still 300 to go, I think, but it's good it's there. So and that makes our life all easier. So those are big steps in doing that. Some people may have gone too hung up on the outcomes only and forget about the 7, 8 other parts that you need to do. Otherwise, only outcomes not going to change the world. So you need to see that. Then the big thing that it varies per country, by the way, but of course the how do we deal with data? How do we think about data and information? I'm in Europe, so privacy is sort of the key word, and doing that as Elizabeth Iceberg, when I discussed it years ago with us, she says there's a problem with that privacy thing. It's from us, and somebody's going to steal it. Well, then healthcare that may not be relevant. We need to trust the doctors. We need to say the doctor's going to treat this confidentially. So then it becomes much less legalized in different things. And my data is not very valuable for anybody, but the combination of data has huge potential, as we all know. And there we see steps forward, but we're still doing that. My country is super good at the organization and other stuff. It's pretty bad yet at the data stuff. In other countries, it's better. But there we want to tap into those benefits, and there's a lot of work to be done. But that's the getting the data bit. Patients know best is one of my favorites, and
Oh, I love it too.
yeah, and putting the data on the people, on the person,
Yeah.
instead of thinking about the whole system where you have all these data sources that you need to connect. But technically speaking, everything is doable. There's no doubt about that. How we organize, how we use, how we bring the data for the team, for the doctor, for the nurses, on the moment, for the planners, on the moment of truth, that's still very much a challenge. It's very much a concern about what people can do with data. So the data thing is moving forward. And the third thing, and I think that is Porter envisioned it. I think we need to applaud him for it, is of course the incredible development of medical technology, combined with better lifestyles, prevention, social developments that we need to do. And he knew that, he envisioned it, and I'm every day super surprised how easy it is to use the model and the frameworks and get new technologies in, whether it's 3D printing or whether it is an algorithm, or whether it's a large language model, or whether it's IoT, or whatever it is, to get it ready for this personalized approach, and bringing in what we call the Menbrick technologies, and then be able to get it in our delivery, to get it in improving it, and how we tweak that and how we do that is super amazing as far as I'm concerned. A lot of work to do, but in short, I think the payment is an issue, but we now know better how to do that. And that was probably a little bit of work. The outcomes, how to get it going, with the help of iChong, but also of other institutions, is good. We know how to do that. Hopefully there will be 300 sets and maintenance on it, because that's going to be a lot of work and very helpful. And the technology, the high hopes we all have, wouldn't it be great if we all had this Vega robot little thingy in our life that sort of scans if everything's okay and then just evolves? Wouldn't that save us a lot of anxiety, a lot of problems, if we could make progress on it? And so I'm super excited about that. So partly on your question, what were sort of the key points? Let me say one more thing. What for me was personally a key point was when Mike Porter and the advisory council of PBC Center Europe sort of said, we need to have a value-based healthcare price. And I'm not I've never done that. I'm not a price guy in that sense, and I make me little bottles. but I'm super excited about how we sort of did. I never organized the Oscars for anything. I don't know how to do that. But I'm super happy that
This might be a Harvard stuff.
yeah, that we've done that, and it has so helped everybody to learn, to cherish, to recognize it. And so there's been 100+ cases of people who have done this and work on it. In Brazil, Swam Fast was
Yeah, yeah.
full insight. In Poland, there was this very interesting approach using the religious community in taking care of kidney patients and how to deal with the choices there. I've seen examples in Pakistan. I've seen examples in my country, in other countries, where people are figuring out to make it work with or without many resources, but do what healthcare is about. It's people, and that is super exciting. So for me personally, his prize was a sort of whoa, how we going to do that? But Michael's right, and it has helped so many people, and I'm very proud today of what we spend more time on now, which is the future prize winners, the Dragons Grant, where we say there's so many super cool ideas, approaches. Some have a proof of concept, some would have won the prize 5 years ago, but the level has come so much up that we want to support them to really move the needle. So I'm sure I can go on and on and on, but let me have your further question. But you can serve a lot of my energy on this job.
What I love the most in the VHC, I think one of the weaknesses we've had in the past, we still do in healthcare, is this part of monetization. We are not good at that at all.
Mhm,
And VBHC, I think it came to, to close this gap.
mhm,
And I know maybe this was not your intention, but when you thought, the leaders in VBHC thought, in payment methods, you included patients. You created a room for patients to raise their voice and say what matters to them. This is something that we patients, and now I'm saying as a patient advocate, we've been trying to do for a long time. And there is also a movement called What Matters to You, that we say we say to the physicians, instead of asking what's the matter with you, ask what matters to you, and then you create a room. It's a simple but a powerful question that creates a room for the patient and family feel comfortable to say the issues that he wants to, the concerns that he wants to bring to the table. So the beautiful thing among all the others, and besides the sustainability, the crucial sustainability that VBHC brings to the world, I think it's the fact that gives a seat to the patient to be proactive, not like it was before, being passive. Because in most situations we had in US, in Europe, and even in Brazil, we have the consuls of patients. That becomes sort of fashion to have this,
right,
to have the consuls of patients. But we were there much more to be a checklist. We have a consul of patients.
right.
So we were there like approve or not approve, we are starting a project, for example, in the innovation section. So this is the project, approve or not approve. And patients, as you mentioned, the program, I forgot the name of the researcher. Patients know best. I love this name.
Dr.
Oh,
Mo, yeah, yeah.
it's pretty smart because patients know best at all.
Yep.
We absolutely know best because we know everything that happens. We are in the front line. We are at the delivery of care. So this is the beauty of the VBHC. In my opinion, VBHC is what's gonna save healthcare.
And I really concur with it. It has been, let me say, there has always been this real need and real push for patients, patient advocacy, patient representation. So there is a whole string, right? It's for me personally, it started when I followed way back, of course, of Richard Beumer at HBS, and he talked about the famous Dana Farber case on patients and safety, and that sort of sort of, we all know that there's a whole stream, and we got joint commission, so there's a whole stream of that. And there's all kinds of different good ideas and other ideas on patient advocacy. What I find interesting of VBHC is that those ideas can be made concrete for patients. So there's very good general policies and intentions and groups but how do we get it to the individual patient and family and doctor team interaction? And for the VBHC perspective, I think Saltjon and others did that, really used what was already known in joint decision making, because that's not a VBHC invention, but to combine joint decision making ideas and learnings and examples with the VBHC pathways and organization that really helped both. It helped the people who really had a clear point on joint decision making, which is not the easiest thing in the world, by the way, and people that said, but we want to get to better outcomes. We want to improve. We don't want to overtreat, overdiagnose. We don't want to undertreat and underdiagnose either. And this has been this thing. And then other people who probably had nothing with VBHC, sometimes followed our green belt and said, well, wait a minute, this is interesting because now I see a way of how it can be deployed instead of only being an advocate saying this needs to be done. And everybody's like, yeah, it needs to be done, but we're very busy. How are we going to do it? So that is what, and I like it. And I learned a lot from that. Only the notion at a certain point from Miss Porter, not family of Mike, who already with their patient advocacy group, and you've been involved in those and many others, saying, patients are our best teachers. Yes, of course. How do we organize that? How do we make it work every day, every minute of the day? How do we bring in the right patients to help the team move forward? Because not every patient can help the whole team. We as doctors or nurses, we're not so much helped with very general policies, intentions, or general ideas, or what you mentioned. You need to approve on things. There's nothing wrong between having patients involved in policy making. Nothing wrong with that. But to get it delivered, we need to do that. And it's still in many countries very hard to have the 2 or 3 patients in a team that are going to give asked and non-asked feedback that may be contributing to it. But then these patients probably need to move to a next stage after, let's say, a year, because then they become so part of the delivery team. You need a fresh eye. So we've learned a lot of that, and actually, it's quite interesting that so many fields that are not VBC by origin benefit from their point of view by using value-based healthcare to get it delivered, whether it's connected care, whether it's lean, whether it's quality management, whether it is patients, whether it is prevention, all these great, whether it's elderly care people that say, this is what needs to be done. Yeah, but the system is not allowing for it. Okay, we found the VBC vehicle on which it will work. And that is, so actually VBC itself has always been very open to other super cool ideas and how that could amplify each other. And actually, now you mention it, that has made me the proudest of what we have done, and also makes me admire Mike Porter on his original thinking and work, that it's flexible enough to adjust, but it's sharp enough to stay to the principles. And I think we're all very, very in debt to him for that.
Yeah, that was wonderful. So now that we have covered your journey, education, and implementation, I would love to explore a little bit Latin America. Latin America is a diverse and complex region with unique healthcare challenges, and you have been deeply involved in expanding VBHC over here. I am based in Brazil, in Latin America.
Yep.
Can you share with us your point of view for the transformation you think of for Latin America from in a VBHC perspective?
Well, thank you for the question. First of all, I must be very modest on that. I really like the Americas, and I got sort of a feel for the Spanish Spanish-speaking world as well. Although in Brazil you speak Portuguese, so let's have Portuguese and Brazilian. But I must be modest, right? I'm a Dutch guy, and being able to work with so many people in your country and others has made me aware that I'm very Dutch. Okay, so I must be modest on what can I say about Latin America. Having said that, what I think is a super good strength from, let's say, the more general view on VBHC is the strength of the families and the networks that seem to be so strong in South America for all kinds of historic and understandable reasons, which is much weaker in my part of the world, where individualism is much higher. And so what I always admired when I saw VBHC initiatives going on, that there was this way of connecting from a social cause. It was never only about healthcare or healthcare delivery or the technical side of it. It's immediately on the people's level. It's immediately on the social level. And there's this usage of this strength of the community. I've seen it with some super good examples from Colombia with award winning. I was impressed with Joan Vask, not because they did something wise on stroke, which is, of course, always super good. But in all fairness, there are more great stroke units around the world. Okay, but the way they set that up in the specific situation in Brazil for the community, for the city, not only for, let's say, the upper class, but for everybody, and use that to get primary care and the family. And I think that is a real strength that I see across Latin America. The other thing I think is an advantage from a distance in Brazil. You have some super excellent, let's say, hospitals who are absolutely world class. They use the knowledge from Singapore and from the US and from Europe, and so you have a very good base of very, very good educated and dedicated people. But of course, there are less resources available most of the time. So I admire your work. Masha Magdisha is absolutely fabulous in her help and doing that, and being able to bring the general ideas and the learnings of others and bring that into, in this situation, the Brazilian setting. So Brazil, I'm pretty impressed with the flexibility there is with some payers. I know everybody, but there is options of doing that. And I had some people in my black belt and green belt who really tried from a payer's perspective to make sure that we get more value for the win-win-win-win. And in other countries, that's often more regulated in a way that it's less flexible. So I think that's a real strength in doing that. And finally, what I like about, and people find it strange if I say that, but actually people in South America, that's pretty broad, huh? From Mexico, although that's North America, to Argentina, they are very practical if they need to do things. And it's not according to the book, but if they want to get it done, they're gonna get going at it and do it. So that energy to do it at a practical level, regardless of all kinds of weird systems or even ideological debates, I like that. So I think there is but if I would say one thing, it is maybe surprising, but it is the focus on the family and the family unit and the community unit, also in very big cities, that I think makes it uniquely possible in your part of the world to implement VBHC, because people need to be helped, and I think that is a strength, and no wonder that there have been Joan Vask, as I mentioned a couple of times, the prize winner. But I've seen many people take that up. I've seen Colombia doing some good stuff. We've seen people from Chile. I always hope that Mexico will come with something. Argentina is a little bit in a dire strait at the moment, but I know people are really trying to work there. So there is an energy, there's a willingness, there's a practicality that I think will get it going. But if it be one thing relatively unique, is the family an extended family unit as a way of organizing, which is quite different than the institutional way of organizing what we're used to in certainly the northern parts of Europe.
I gotta tell you, you are reading us very well.
No, I love the people and the food, to be honest.
Thank you for answering that, addressing my question about Latin America. So, well, now let's shift to a topic that I'm very excited about: dentistry and value-based healthcare, which should be a new perspective for the VBHC world. Remember, Professor, in our recent conversation, you mentioned that your perspective of dentistry had changed.
Right.
I'd love to explore that. What led you to shift your perspective?
Well, I think like many people, you need to go to the dentist every now and then. And I do not know many people who love to go to the dentist. So that is sort of my
My mother
was, and to be honest, I knew it's important, of course, and I knew, of course, that there is this relationship with let's say your stomach and gastronomy, and that your mouth is a reflection of your health, and in one way or the other. So that's sort of that was sort of my knowledge on it, and I did something with that, and on how you could market it and things like that, but never really thought on the dentistry. So what changed that for me, and I think actually for the jury of the prize as well, that so some people from Australia, Victoria Dental, yep, I said it correctly. So they were following the green belt sometimes, and I love to have them in the class, and you learn from people, and they sort of say something and what they were trying to do. So they were super cool. But then one day they sent in their application, and I had some hope for that as a potential winner, but I'm non-voting, so I give it to the jury, and I was really curious about whether that will be sort of in the next round or whether it will be nah. But actually, there was not unanimously, but there was quite a big support immediately for that example of the dentistry. And then, of course, we start looking with what does it mean for patients and what does it mean in terms of outcomes. And later that became an item set as well. And when you start thinking about it and you see how important it not only is, let's say, from the medical consequences from your health, if you have problems with your teeth or you cannot eat enough, or that there's all kinds of other stuff that sort of contributes to inflammation, then that is okay. That's okay. That's serious. That's no problem. That's clear. However, thinking about the great measurement of, do you dare to smile? Do you those things that are so important for self-esteem, for being out there, for getting your place, getting your place in the world, that effect, that sort of saying, but we really as dentists in Australia, of course, we need to do all the things we know as dentists that we need to do in our profession, prevention and having all kinds of advanced stuff. But to say, but the real thing we do is put a smile on people's face in all the meanings, and that is what we need to do. And then hit that hidden. Wow! Apart from, on top of maybe on top of the medical thing, this is really so impactful. And then they did it for 300,000 people, and were able to convince the NHS payer to sort of allow them some space, and trying to reduce or hopefully to zero one day, that people do not need to pay to go to the dentist. Because I don't know why you want people to go to the dentist apart from the budget reason maybe, but if you hinder people to go to the dentist, it's going to happen. And they showed that. They said, well, the system is hindering people to go to the dentist. The effect is the only patients we really get are people with really serious problems. And then we try to help and fix them with all kinds of stuff. And then the payer says, man, that's expensive. Can you not do a cheaper way? Well, the cheapest way is to do the right thing. Start with prevention, put a smile on people's face, do those things, because that not only will avoid these costs, but it will, to a degree, right? To a degree, it will also have such a tremendous impact on your general health. It will have such an impact on your social health. it will have a tremendous effect on that. So that is, I knew it was sort of vaguely there, but I never really got the insight. The other thing was, and I learned that from you, is saying, well, you have certain fellow medical professionals treating patients on autonomy or bowel diseases or inflammation or diabetes. But we need, if we as dentists can be part of the team, there will be much better outcomes for the patients. There will be an adjustment to the treatments. There will be thinking about the effects of other drugs or interventions or what we do on the dental and the customer health. So we need to be, for certain medical conditions, much more be part of the team, or at the right patients group be part of the team. Because if we don't do that, the patient's worse off, but also our team members are worse off. And I think there's a world to win there. And we're very happy that after you did all the work with VBHC, and actually also did your amazing black belt project with Mohammed Des, then I said, well, and asked my advisor, I think we may want to ask Isabella to be an ambassador, not per se for Brazil. Of course, she can do whatever she wants in Brazil, but certainly on this dentistry in the broad sense, and at the same time be a force of power in patient efficacy, because those two things are probably what is needed around the world. Certainly, if for bad or wrong reason, the resources seem to be constrained at the moment, and we really need that look. So I became super excited about dentistry. I never thought I would, to be honest.
Yeah. So much for that. But dentistry, we classically in history, we were known as professionals who build stuff. We were just building stuff, rehabilitation stuff, or applying fluoride in children, or using prosthets in elderly population. And what I love in the case of Victoria is that they brought dentistry to the VBHC world so that people could think of it. Well, dentistry can be a thing.
Yeah,
We can think about dentistry in value-based healthcare. That was super nice because they brought into the populational health.
absolutely.
I think that the next level and the next challenge, if I can say that, for dentistry would be to align, to collaborate with medicine. And instead of working prevention in general,
Yeah.
could work prevention aligned with care cycles in diabetes, care cycles in oncology, care cycles in bone marrow transplantation, and cardiological to prevent endocarditis. What I can tell you is whatever condition you give me, I can give you a solution for dentistry. And if we include formally in the journal the dentistry early in the prevention, we help to provide with better outcomes and help with the burden in healthcare. So I think this is the challenge we have to address. And I know this is a super mountain we have to climb,
Right.
but every step of the way, we start with small steps,
Yeah.
and I'm ready to go there.
I think you brought forward some very practical things, at least as ideas, and you may have been able to convince people to do it. But something as simple as, if you go to your GP should ask you to open your mouth, and he should check your mouth,
Yeah.
right? Not only look at the computer, but then of course know what to look at. Okay, so maybe it's a little bit to the Chinese medicine as well. We look at the tongue and things like that, but say, well, why don't we have that, right? We always get a question, why don't they just very quickly check a couple of those things? That could be a thing. And I think it's the right timing to have you with dentistry in, because we've learned from the Cleveland Clinic, for instance, and others have adopted the same sort of delivery, saying, well, we are, the organizational model is teams of teams. So we have the patient. Around that patient, we get a team to try to deal with it, but sometimes you also need another team. So around the patient, you need to create a team of teams, instead of the department angle that we still very much struggling with, to be fair. and there's specific disciplines which need to develop themselves. There's no doubt about it. But from a patient perspective, we must think about these teams of teams. And I'm pretty convinced that where we now in many countries say there's always a question on smoking cessation, there's always a question on depression, because we know how we can in a modular way fix 80% of that very simply. And the 30% really hard things we need to do differently. So I'm very optimistic about the timing, and see that those who love the teams of teams concept, or those who say, wait a minute, we need to improve the diagnostics and the prevention. And we can do that really very, very easy with when we are in contact with people. And you do it the other way around. Say, well, I have a patient and I know that patient has diabetes, so I need to look at other stuff. Or I see there is some stuff with other problems in the body, or inflammation. And no wonder, because I see it in the mouth, and we can help together. So from that angle, I think the role of GPs in dentistry is getting closer, probably. And dentistry is no longer per se seen as a sort of a separate rehab, physiotherapist, plumbing, if I could say that. That was sort of a plumbing stuff, but it is a part of, and super excited nude. And the interesting thing is, it's not very expensive to do that, number one. And the other thing, the potential avoidable spend is very high. So we should be able to get models that will, like Pateria is doing, that we get models that the people who are concerned about their monthly budget a little bit more supported.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what we are going to build ahead. I'm very excited. Unfortunately, our conversation is about to end. I could stay here all day long, but before we wrap up, Professor, I would love for you to leave our audience with some key takeaways. If you think of some important lessons you've learned, if you could leave some message of encouragement for our audience, that you believe that the BHC people could work with, could reflect on, what they should know, what would it be?
Well, on a personal note, is we should trust and encourage professionals, whether they're doctors or nurses or physiotherapists or the people in the diagnostics lab or GPs, whatever. We should trust those people and encourage and support them. It's no use to continue second guessing or thinking we need to tell them how to do it right. On the other hand, we can ask, and we should ask these professionals to show to the world or their community, in all fairness, what their outcomes and results are. Okay, so we should sort of say, you need your professional encouragement, you need your professional development. You also need to show, not to be penalized, but to show to your community that you are indeed striving for the absolute best outcomes for your patients. And people go to medical school or want to be a nurse because they want to do good for people. There's an intrinsic motivation. And sometimes people get lost on that intrinsic motivation because of the system or unpleasant developments or even obnoxious patients. I can all understand that, but we really, so that's the number one thing. It's people. So and start with these professionals and help them build the good teams around the patients. So that is the number one thing. The other thing is, we know that most of the time, if we focus on the patient, so learn from the patients and focus on the patient, that most of the time we organize better, have more fun, and actually will have lower cost per patient cycle. So, and I know it's a daily battle, because we're all sort of put into budgets and weird contracts and pressure for time. But we should try to have the guts to stand up to that, like many have done in VBHC, and say, wait a minute, we're not going to only do outcomes. We may start with pathways, but we know we need to do all 7 things plus, and we need to have better contracts, because otherwise it's not going to work. And so that's my final comment. It's fine where you start with VBHC, but please make sure that over time in implementation, you take a balance sheet. There's work that you may need to do that you do not really like. Most people love outcomes and the patients and the pathway stuff and don't love the contracting stuff or don't love the org stuff or don't love whatever they need to do to make it work. But I want to encourage everybody to understand really what it is first. Yes, I'd say do the yellow belt, do the green belt, do the black belt, so you know what it is. You will avoid 100 mistakes. So that's number one. But number two is you cannot do everything at the same time, but also understand you need to do a couple of things, and don't think that just doing one bit, only contracts or only outcomes or only pathways is going to bring you anywhere. You really need to sort of see this as a journey, and where I see some disappointment sometimes in VBHC, it has to do, or it was just not understood and sort of weirdly done, or just plain wrong. Those things happen, but most of the time, getting hung up on one part and not taking the step back and thinking about what is it that we need to do for stroke, for patients with stroke and their families. What do we need to do for children with diabetes? What do we need to do for patients with dental problems? What do we need to do with people that do not have access to basic care, which will make such a big difference in their life? We need to start there and then understand VBHC and figure out how we could do that, and know that over time we need to do all of it. Because most of the disappointments I see is when people only did outcomes or only changed the organization or only came into some sort of a contract. And that's the nice thing, but also the hard thing. The more of the things you have in place, the more it's going to fly. and that is also sometimes hard to tell your CEOs, chief medical officers, chief finance officers, because I understand they want to see results quickly. That's clear, but they also like to see one simple story that you can implement tomorrow. Well, to a certain degree, you must give us a simple story, but it must also be clear that it's going to take a time before we get the real big splash. We're going to get the results, but we get the big splash. So you can see I'm an implementation guy, but I think it's an important thing. Start with your professionals, with the trust, and of course, these people need to. If you have freedom of act, you also need to show that you're worth it, and those things we need to be encouraging. And in some countries, it's very hard because professionals to penalize if they are honest about their mistakes. If they're honest about we are operating 20% of the people on their knees, which we should not do, or we're not operating 10% because we didn't catch it, or it's too hard, or for whatever reason, or our output were not as good as we'd hoped, but and we losing sleep over it, but we're gonna darn well improve. We're gonna not cheat on that. So, and sometimes it's very hard because people penalize you without understanding the challenges and the variation in patients, and you have a bad day sometimes. You do. You don't want it, but you have a bad day. So we need that understanding a little bit more. The second thing is patience, and also the annoying, horrible patients. Yes, we have them. Yes, we do. And the third bit is basically understand you need to get all the bits and pieces at a decent level. Don't go overboard on one of them because you like it or it's fun. You're not going to get the results, and it may even not be worth the time or the money to do it. So there is some real work to do, but most of it is super cool to do with your team.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Professor, this has been such an insightful conversation. Your journey, your vision, your dedication to expanding your knowledge with us today. And my personal thank you to you. I know you have a super busy agenda. So sharing 1 hour of your day with me with this podcast project, for me, it means the world to me. Thank you so much. Thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoyed the conversation, please share it, leave a review, or stay connected for more discussion on transforming healthcare through value-based principles. See you next time. Bye.